Right, welcome to episode 11 of Inside the Teacher Studio. Today we have a returning guest, Dr. Tracy L. Johnson. And I knew when we had our first conversation that I had a lot of follow-up questions, and I'm just so glad and fortunate that he came back so soon, a couple episodes later. So if you're new here, please like, subscribe, comment, share. Started. So before we jump in, what's good, Dr. Johnson?
Living life. I'm getting ready for a couple of conferences coming up in March. And just preparing for those. It's my first two conferences as Dr. Johnson. So I graduated last year. So yeah, pretty exciting about that.
So what brought you joy today?
Oh, wow. My daughter getting her homework done.
Oh, how old is Maya?
Maya's 9.
9. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And our son, Jesse, is getting ready to go on his first college spring break trip. So
wow.
And some friends, they one of their friends' parents have timeshare, and they're like, oh, we're going to take advantage of that. So yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Nice. Where are they headed?
The Appalachian Mountains.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's funny how this side of the world goes to LA beaches, and then the other side of the world, the side of the States, goes to like Florida or something. So that's nice to know. I've never been to the Appalachian Mountains before.
Oh, you should go.
Yeah, definitely. One day I'll make it. The closest I got, or I was in North Carolina twice going through the airport. So I haven't had a chance to actually see your home state. So
what's airport?
Charlotte.
Charlotte. Okay. Both times Charlotte. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Close to the mountains, yeah.
Is that close to the mountains?
Yeah, you're close.
Okay.
Yeah, not too far. Get to the Piedmont, that's where me and John are from. And
okay.
And definitely the coast and the Outer Banks. I mean, North Carolina is that East Coast. We have it all, the mountains and the coast. So
absolutely. Okay. Well, cool. So I told you I had so much to follow up on, just because there were so many things that I would have liked to have explored a little bit more. However, I try to keep these, within a reasonable amount of time. But last time when you were introducing yourself and you were sharing that your doctorate, you looked at African identity to African personality.
Yes.
And you identify as an African personality.
Mm-hmm.
I think you said it needs to be set to remind you not to project who you are onto multicultural population. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. I didn't know how to articulate it until I started reading Dr. Amos Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave some very good advice about the idea of projecting. And even Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, about living vicariously, and this whole thing of this culture that we live in and this idea of assimilation and whatnot. When you're growing up with the family that I grew up with, and then you're thrown into the public, that's a strong resistance there. Thank God. And so, by the time I really got to high school, well, middle school, high school, but definitely in college, post-secondary, I had this idea that I needed to really hone in my identity, and I put off going to getting my doctorate for years. And even when I decided I was going to do it, I was like, okay, I'm going to read before I go. And I spent a number of years reading. And when I went in with the mindset that, okay, I'm going to hold my person, because I don't know if you or everyone else experiences it, and this is something I really need to look more into, but I really do think that when we as people of color, when we go into a part of society that is really not our own, we look around and see, okay, well, what is everyone else doing, right? And in doing that, you start to forget who you are. And you say, well, I'm going to just do this. This seems like the right thing to do. And I'll say, I'm not doing that. So every paper that I wrote it with the African identity. I started off African identity. That's my main title. And then whatever it was I had to speak about. My first paper, big paper, and they do these testers for you, and you have to write a one pager with like 15 different references and things like that. And in that paper, it was my manifesto. It was like I claimed my identity, and if maybe a class or two after that, the African identity changed into the African personality. You're constantly reading, you're constantly doing things. And I mentioned our last interview with Edward Nichols. Well, Edward Nichols too, Edward Nichols, but then also Edward Blyden. Edward Blyden was the first person I could find who used the term African personality. And there's been others since. And so it holds me. It helped me through that program. And it set the course for everything that I did then and I'm doing now.
Yeah, and you mentioned that in order to respect different cultures, you must respect yours first,
yes,
right?
You do.
And you said that you go into interactions in that way. What impact do you think that knowing your culture and respecting your culture has on the interactions you have with different cultures?
It varies. I mean, it truly varies. There's no one size fits all. I have interaction within my community where people get it and like, great. I have interactions within my community like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? And it's everything. But overall, I found, and I do find that people overall feel comfortable. And I know I do. And it really, you can really start to open up and speak about the differences, discuss the things that you have in common and whatnot. But it's a respect of understanding life and having respect for that. And ultimately, like, the whole idea is that regardless of our like cultural logic, like it's explained by like Edward Nichols, regardless of that, at the core is just the balance for life, the preservation of life. And so we hear things that and we see things now, especially now, where that may not be the case, or that may not be where some people feel like that they have to destroy others or things for them to feel successful or safe. And that may not be the right way to go. I mean, and all of that's been studied. Here in Chicago, we have a lot of scholars. When you think about cultures and logic, they can be healthy, and they can be in variations of healing and being harmed and traumatized. And so when you have those things, those extremes, like racism and other things like that, Dr. Bobby Wright, who practiced here in Chicago, so he wrote about that, about the psychopathic behavior of racism and that kind of behavior. So it sets everything for me as a social scientist to be able to say, okay, these things are here and how they're happening. Because so many times, like, we get caught up in whether it be work, politics, different parts of our lives, and we look at something and we're like, we project who we are on it when it's not coming from our community.
Hmm.
And we're like, well, what's that? Why would they do that? That doesn't make any sense. But when you can know yourself and like can really articulate it and can identify yourself, identify others, it takes all of those questions. Like those things are left because I'm not throwing my cultural logic on like what's going on in politics right now.
Hmm.
I don't have to I don't have to question that because if I projected myself onto it, I'll be confused for the rest of my days.
Right.
Yeah, don't want to do that.
That's really interesting how you just said, why would I? It's almost like your cultural lens. Somebody else isn't going to necessarily understand that. And why are you going to engage in that manner?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever felt that? And if you have, tell me about a time where you felt like you might have wanted to give your perspective, if you will, and what that thought process was like. Did you stop yourself? Did you actually engage and then you learned your lesson after that? Or can you think of a time when that happened?
Where I projected myself and I was like, wait a minute, what am I doing?
Yeah, so as I listen to you, I'm thinking about, I get sucked in a lot of times. I get sucked in a lot of times. I'm like, how are we experiencing the same thing, but experiencing it in completely different, like we're seeing completely different things.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes I feel like that's kind of like what I call the selective erudition, right? It's like you're going to be smart about things when you want to be, but you're going to be completely ignorant in other times. And so I'm trying to like come up with an example that doesn't make me go down a road that I'm going to get like incensed right now. But like, I'm just thinking about, have you ever had one of those experiences where you're like, so you're seeing this, but you can't see it from my perspective. Let me give you a little bit about that. And then you either stopped yourself or you did it and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that.
Oh wow. um wow, there's a lot. So I used to own a coffee company and restaurant, like you mentioned that briefly before I really got into academics. Um and I used to do work with the city of Charlotte. I did some work with NASCAR and whatnot. And there was a couple of incidents with the city, one with the city of Charlotte, and then one with NASCAR. But let's just take the city of Charlotte because there was just it wasn't anyone official there. NASCAR was a different thing, but so I maybe have had a contract with them at that point, maybe like 2 years. And so I did special events. I was at the different venues and sports and entertainment and stuff. And I served coffee and other things. And so there's a bigger event coming into um, a theater. And so I was bringing in some different equipment and things like that. I get, you know, instructions from the director who controls two of those venues, those sites. And he's like, hey, Tracy, like, look for this guy, go to this door number and tell him you need this. And, I authorize it for you because, we got to get stuff going. So I do that. Go to the door and not, hit the doorbell. Guy comes. I'm like, hey, I'm Tracy, got these things to do. And everything is, done. He had an assistant because normally union jobs you have an apprentice, right? And so the older guy, younger guy. We get the stuff. I'm like, hey, thanks, I really appreciate it. Walking out, and I'm a teacher, so really good hearing. And walking out, the younger guy, apprentice, like, I can't believe you let him talk to you like that.
Mm.
And I was like, now I'm walking out. We're walking out, and the older guy who's behind me, he kind of like turns around, like, sisters him up, like, oh no, don't do that. And so I leave. And I thought about that. And of course, I remember to this day because this happened when I was in my 20s. So, we talked some time. But um, yeah, I was like, and then I looked at myself and I was like, wait a minute now, Tracy, did you in any way offend this guy? Now I
Mm.
never talked to the younger guy, just talked to the older guy. And I was like, no, went through everything. No, no, I didn't. So then it becomes, all right, so what was this younger guy seeing?
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
You're and I have lots, I had long hair and everything, but professional, yeah. I mean, I'd done business with BAE Systems out of London, like, projects. Um, I've worked with some microsystems. I've done some contracts, but um, what that young guy was seeing, I could project my logic onto what he was seeing something. Now, was his logic or cultural logic, was it healthy?
Mm.
Probably not, you know, because I've had many interactions with people, with different people. Um, but when you run into, when we say cultural logic, we can't assume that um, everyone and even ourselves are like completely healthy. And we have
Mm.
to evaluate and gauge that as well.
Right.
Um, so it's not a lock-in type gear that's always, positive and going. We have these variations. And so, yeah, that was, it took me a minute, to get there. Go ahead.
So I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I'm following. He asked you why you let the other guy talk to him like that, or he asked the
So
older guy.
the younger guy, the apprentice, asked his mentor, why are you letting this guy, me, talk to you that way? Two white guys,
Uh-huh.
one old one, yeah. And when I have work to do, I have work to do. I'm like, I'm not trying to be your best friend. I have these objectives. I'm going to get them done because I got other stuff to do. I'm not going to be rude.
Right.
Uh, Definitely, I'm pleasant and hey, sir, and I don't do the boss or the hey, you, or
Right.
chief or friend and all that kind of mess. You still respect your people. And but because I was objective to him, because I had authority and was sovereign within myself,
Mm-hmm.
get what I needed to get done. I never asked him what I needed to get done.
Mm-hmm.
These are the things I need to get done.
Right.
And so, yeah, so the young guy has had some feelings about that.
Yeah. That's really interesting because I make connections to an experience I had or have a lot in education where um, whether it be with the adultification of Black girls, whether it be the disrespect shown to um, Black men or women in the profession, like with others refusing to call them doctor, right?
Well, yeah, yeah,
Um, and, I just, it incenses me and I feel like I have to say something because I sometimes feel like the fact that you had to go through that whole like trying to play the tape back and seeing whether or not there was something you did.
yeah. I'm
Um,
always going to check myself first.
well, absolutely, right. But I also I always find it interesting that we feel the need to run this through our minds, but don't necessarily see that happening with other people, if you
Yeah.
understand what I mean,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And so, this person that I call Dr. Gilliard Shine happens to be somebody that I worked with, and we taught sixth grade math and science together at a Montero Middle School, go Toros. And I called her work wife because we always did everything together. And there were other colleagues of ours who refused to call her Dr. Shine, Dr. Gilliard Shine. And I just thought, what is that about? Right. And it happened also with our principal, who happens to also be, she's going to be somebody else who's going to be on the show, Dr. Williams. And there was this, I felt a disrespect of the refusal to call somebody by
You,
that.
that happens a lot. It happens at my workplace.
Yeah.
And with that kind of, mentality, that ill will, unhealthiness.
Mm-hmm.
I, I got this from my sister, Tasha. She listens and a lot of lessons and reads a lot as well. Um, I believe it was Dr. Small. He quoted a guy, right guy. He said something about what we're talking about, not showing the respect and you know, needing people to be lesser than you, even though whether it be academically or professionally
Mm-hmm.
not. They he said, and this is just paraphrase, but he said something to the fact that this white guy, how can I be who I need to be without making you who I need for you to be? Something to that effect. So
Mm-hmm.
this and I just boil it down to just a bully type mentality. I
Right.
mean, you have nothing else in your being, right?
Right.
That you can't stand on who you are without first putting someone else down
Right.
who may or may not, and if they're on par, if they're advanced in you, that's even worse. They want
Right.
to put you even further. um I had a boss, a supervisor, a principal. I was in North Carolina before I left, and he was like a couple of inches taller than me, older, bigger. Had his doctorate at the time. I just had my undergraduate degree. Um, and the other teachers, like other white male teachers, after about a year or so, they finally told me, "Hey Tracy, he's intimidated by you."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "What do you mean?" Like, this guy's no more is my boss. If you look at physically, he's taller, bigger than I am. Academically, he has like 2 degrees more than I do. What?
Right.
What are you saying? You can't adjust other people. I can't go out into my life and adjust everyone and say, hey, you're gonna call me this and you're gonna call me that. It's not my protocol to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I look at Amos Wilson. It's like, if you want to change the relationship, you just adjust yourself. I
Mm-hmm.
can control me, and
Right.
I'm going to do that. And if you have ill will, then take it with you,
Right.
because regardless of how the chips fall or falling, I'm still me and you still you.
Right. Right. Yeah. You also talked about that you study cultural behaviors
Hmm.
dealing with academics.
Yeah.
Where did this path of study first emerge for you?
Oh, it's been a part of my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I ever. I mean, I think I was born doing it. I have thought about it for so long. Um, and I mentioned a story about the Valentine's thing and
Right.
whatnot. When you have people um, communicating, and we think, in images, and we do. Um, when you have those things going, and we all naturally use cultural logic. If you're unaware what you're doing, then you can retard someone's learning.
Mm.
Um, and not just that, you could, bring them against learning.
Mm.
I have a lot of um, childhood friends and um, people I grew up with that, we were all like, oh, you're not a good learner. You're not this. They all have advanced degrees, have businesses, and they're doing great. But having that experience, it was the one thing that I knew that I was not going to have my children in situations, academic situations, where I was not there to monitor and to say that I have alignment here. This is beneficial to my child. We grew up in a time of the second wave of integration and everything. And I had people in my studies where they talked about, putting different people, cultural people in the same room, and that's not multiculturalism. That's not integration. That's assimilation.
Right.
If the teacher and the curriculum writers and the principals and everyone else, if they are unable to recognize the differences in a healthy way,
Mm-hmm.
and then interact and think about how can I make my adjustments to help not just this group of people, but everyone in front of me, then you're doing a disservice.
Mm. Yeah. Are there any cultural behaviors that emerged in your studies that weren't any that you thought you were going to study, like they were a surprise to you?
Oh, wow. So no, not really. Most of what my main tool is Edwin Nichols' philosophical aspects of cultural differences, right? And that really changed my life. It gave me um, the tool to really just see the world, and not you always see in the world,
Right.
but to articulate not only to yourself but to others, because it reaffirms your behavior. Like you don't think I'm doing the right thing. You don't, hey, I know in this situation what I need to do, probably know how you're going to respond, probably know how you're going to respond. And I can okay, all right. But it you have to be able to you got to practice. Like it's not an overnight thing.
Right.
Yeah, I owe all of that to a gentleman who's a retired police officer at my school in North Carolina, and him and his family moved back to North Carolina after retired out of New York, Reeves Bay, Mr. Reeves Bay, and he's like, it's like Johnson, it's like, come here, just pull me to the side. I'm an art teacher. He said, I want to share this with you. Like, I think you might get this. He gives me, the cassette. And I listened to one of Nichols' lectures like 10, 15 times. I was like, man, what is he talking about? What is this? What is this? But I never stopped. And I just kept going. Because somewhere in there I was like, this makes sense. And it just ends up being that. I the first person that I really I guess shared it with was my sister. I keep bringing up, she's an engineer like John and stuff, and they're very technical and everything. She was rising up in her positions and stuff at work, and she was having these troubles dealing with different people and this and that. I was like, well, Casa, like maybe let me tell you some stuff. And as I just started, and it took about a year and a half, and she called one day. She was like, wow, like she's like, I'm not stressed anymore.
Mm.
I can understand what people are trying to say better. I can speak and communicate to them better. And I'm like, okay, so yeah.
Okay. I'm still amazed at your story of your entree into teaching. How you being raised confident, and it's your job and your responsibility. If you have something to say, you need to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And you came across a professor or instructor who basically let you teach for the next 2 weeks, or challenged you to teach. I don't know. I don't exactly know what that looked like for you. But
I took this opportunity.
Right. And I'm doing this now from the perspective of the teacher or the professor, right? I see power struggles going on a lot. In what ways do you think that teacher was having some kind of feeling, or that instructor was having some kind of feeling some kind of way about the fact that you had something to say? Like, would you feel like there was a power struggle at all?
I mean, if it was, then I think it was sudden for her. I don't think she was really expecting rebuttal. So for her to respond as quickly and as finite as she did, I was like, oh, okay. So, that's, I would say she may have been a little arrogant. And I think that, sometimes people, when they believe the lies about other communities, it's their own fault.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you feel like she was looking at you like, oh, if you think you can do it better, go ahead and do it, and then she just left you there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it definitely went from being a community thing to, I'm going to get, this mostly, African-American class at this HBCU school to learn about this woman, because it's about, I don't know what was going on in her mind. I can only say, like, maybe she was thinking differentiation or what have you. I don't know, but there's nothing wrong with rebuttal. It's nothing. And it's so funny. My first conference I'm doing is titled, my lesser talking point is the right to read, the right to talk, and academic freedom in the classroom. And so the paper that I, still being me, same thing with what happened in undergrad. Professor was like, "Oh, I gotta set you up. Like, it's my third year. I'm doing my last classes. I'm doing my dissertation." She's like, "You're passionate about special education and this manual that we've been going over this whole class. These little reports that you're writing." She didn't agree with me, but it's not your point to disagree or agree. At that level is all about, am I communicating to you properly? Are my resources right? Is the grammar right? Is the structure right? And the particular paper that she responded to, I used the word logic in like 3 different ways. Right. And then she turned around and called my work passionate. And I don't know if you know, but the definition of passionate means to be lost. Is to be, unlogical. It's the opposite of logical. And I took high offense to that. And so I proceeded to write another small paper the coming week. And then for the final paper, I wrote a paper that she tried to get me kicked out of the program with.
Wow.
But couldn't. No.
Of course not. I mean, that's the part that's really interesting. It's like you said, the point is, am I communicating well? Am I supporting my argument well, right? And it's not for you as the professor or the teacher to agree, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to rebuttal, then rebuttal. But it's ironic that paper that she tried to use to fail me out of the program, I'm presenting it at the conference.
I love that. That is perfect. Let's see. You talked about how you were raised with, going back to that conversation about you were raised with confidence, and if you have something to say, you better say it, right? And that you literally had to teach yourself. How did you, or did you advocate for yourself, or did you just put your head down, you're like, I'm gonna learn what I'm gonna learn?
Well, in speaking up for myself, 3rd grade, I switched schools. I went to the older elementary school, and they have built a newer elementary school in the town.
Mm-hmm.
And had, good with math and everything. Probably didn't spend as much time as I needed to reading and whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
because I was always, trying to learn how to hunt or fit something or whatever. But and then the stuff that we were reading had no interest for me at all. But third grade, and I'm telling this young female teacher that basically her daughter needed to stay out of my desk.
Mm-hmm.
And her daughter, when I was younger, just come into the room and just, have at it. And I
Right.
was like, I like to keep my stuff, and it happened like once or twice. And I was just like, hey, Miss Smith, like, you can keep your daughter out of my desk.
Right.
Yeah, she didn't like that. Yeah, I got that year. I got put in a special ed department, and I was there from third grade. Yeah, from
What?
from third grade through um, 10th grade. 10th grade, they gave me an IQ test, and I have above average IQ.
From 3rd to 10th. Just
Yeah,
because you spoke up and this teacher didn't like what you had to say.
I've heard worse.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and
Because
ironically,
my next question was, give me an example of some impact that an educator had who either deemed
mhm.
you incapable or wanted you to fail, and you just gave me a really big one.
Well,
How? Go ahead.
I'm a threat.
Right.
People like us are a threat, and especially being male.
Mm-hmm.
And I own that. As growing up, I really own that. I walk into a room, I know I'm going to be a threat,
When you
and
say you own it, what do you mean by that? You just
own
acknowledge that
it.
that's going to happen, or you
No, I
agree?
just acknowledge that people are going to have their responses. They don't have the same cultural logic that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And when you walk into a room and there's multicultural population in there, yeah, I mean, especially when you're looking at professional things going on and whatnot, and everybody's climbing the ladder and all of that and competition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how did that teacher in 10th grade decide they were going to test you? This was a special ed teacher?
Um, it came from the guidance counselor.
Guidance
And
counselor.
just yeah, I always did, well on the stuff that I did in that era.
Mm-hmm.
But I always will read and do my own thing and just, always had a natural like desire to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So and it was funny, like same sister, she was like, Trace, like, see this teacher, third grade teacher, she probably did you a favor. I'm like, what do you mean?
Also,
I know, real conversation. She was like, she took you out of the environment of assimilation. Like you think like me now. She says that I think very differently than most people who had to go through the whole system of public education, like K-12 through the whole thing. I was in an environment where I was allowed to do what I do, man. I was like, okay, I'm going to do what I do. And I would get when I was out of that environment, like I would get nervous. I mean, like speak up, family, yes, but I do have like this, and I had to get over. And I tell my students this too, but I had to get over this idea of like public speaking and speaking like in groups because I would be in spelling bees. I would forget the most easiest word. Oh yeah, I did a eighth grade. I did a science project and we had to present. I didn't really like do it and got up there at the podium, passed out, head bounced
oh
on the
no.
podium. Oh man, yeah. I tell my students that I'm like, and they're like, they can't believe it. I'm like, look, you're not going to do that bad because I like for my students to present.
Right.
In the class. I'm like, you're gonna need this, and let's go ahead and work on it now. And so
Mm-hmm.
we take little baby steps and do it. So, but you have to, you got to own the things that you're good at, own the things you're not good at, work at everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, but I had that space. I had the space to maintain myself, what my family was doing at home and
Mm-hmm.
what they had done before I entered public education. That me was able to slowly, quietly grow.
Hmm.
And she was like, you need a thinker. Yeah, in an
Right.
odd way. I mean, only African personalities can be like, not too bad,
Right.
But
It's interesting that your sister brought that up because
mhm,
I know that in the spaces that I'm in with like primary, like elementary schools,
mm,
the parents that are savvy are fighting for their kids to get into special ed because they know that they're going to get some more individualized attention there than in a general ed class, and that their student is going to be able to, I guess, shine in the way that they shine.
yeah.
Is that what your
Well,
sister was talking about?
no, no,
No.
this was special ed, whew, 40 years ago
Uh,
plus.
I don't know what
uh, but no, but it was, I started learning programming, DOS, when computers first came out, in like from third, fourth, fifth grade.
wow.
I was always on a computer programming. Um, when I was doing that time away from like, general classes, whatnot.
Hmm.
Middle school, I was exploring. Spent a lot of time doing that. Um, the year point something in high school, reading, and by the time I came out, it was okay. Like I'm ready to go.
Mm.
Um, I was determined. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to college. What are these things I need to have and be ready, prepare for that? So I spent the next, 3+ years getting ready for that transition.
Mm. And did anybody tell you how you needed to prepare for that, or you just knew, look, this is what I got to do to get to the place where I can be
I
ready?
no, I researched.
Wow.
I taught. I mean, I have my family. John was in
Mhm.
school. His sister had gone through school. My uncle, my mom had started a little bit. Um, Other family, like I just, you listen, you ask questions when you need to, and you just go and get it.
And it's just what your family did. It's like there
Yeah,
wasn't really any conversation. You learn by doing, and you learn by being immersed in that
yeah.
kind of, I guess, work ethic, level of
Mhm.
expectation.
Yeah,
Got it.
no one's gonna do it for you.
Yeah.
And that's an aspect of school that I really don't like. The idea of we have to baby you or
Mhm.
we have to do this for you. Um, the challenge, I just feel like the challenges, um, the struggle is what really grows us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
When you say we got to do this for you, whose perspective is that?
So the perspective is, the adult, the teachers, the administration,
Hmm.
um, family, this expectation of you poor little child. You're in this situation.
Yeah.
Um, you this is rough, and let me take care. I know you
Hmm.
couldn't get it this time, but let me make you happy now, and you're gonna want it even more later. Nah, it's you're pacifying,
Right.
and pacifying is in its definition is to subtle, like to um de-escalate.
Hmm.
Why
And I
would you
mean
want to do that?
that completely is really a low level of expectation, right? It's like you baby them, or the minute that they say, I don't know what to do, like we're rushing to take their hand and walk them there, right? That's one of the things that I battle a lot in education is, and I tell my kids all the time, they're like, why do you give us such hard things? I'm like, because I know you. I believe that you have it in you to do, right? It's like, I'm going to be here to support, but my favorite quote from last time was that you said that you were an agent behind enemy lines. And that really spoke to me as somebody who has really spent the better half of my last 10 years consciously being an anti-racist educator. And I'm wondering, in what ways is your being an agent behind enemy lines, does that involve, to any kind of extent, being an anti-racist educator?
Oh, yeah, but like you have to teach to the best qualities of people's cultural logic. You have to. Whether, and I was at a school 99% African American. Same thing. I'm a
right.
Agent behind enemy lines.
Right.
I've been at schools where I could probably count between me and every staff person there and the students on two hands, with like 2,000 students. Yeah, it doesn't matter. You have, unfortunately, you have that there, but academics, really, the way that we have it structured here in the United States, really wasn't meant for our population, in the sense of to be better.
Right.
It, I theorize between the theories that they couple together with behaviorism, constructivism, and constructionism. Yeah, the African, Black and Brown community, Asian community are more of a raw material resource for the other population.
I love that. I know that one of your superpowers, right, is just building that confidence in your students and sending them off stronger than they were when they got to you. When you see that your colleagues aren't really understanding the importance of building that relationship, like, what do you do? Do you feel compelled to say something? Do you feel, no, it's just a matter of, I'm just going to do what I do?
Yeah. If you, and probably relate easier with this in a business type mindset, but the first person who speaks loses in a struggle, right? So if someone wants to, hey, Johnson, I like what you're doing. Okay, but I'm not gonna. Yeah.
Right. Got it. I want to revisit an example that you gave about some project-based learning that you did with your students, where you they did a family history, and you had them interview either a grandparent or that level and above, and that you actually had those folks come in. Was I understanding you correctly that you actually had those folks that your students interviewed, that you learned a lot from? Did you actually have them come in and speak to your class?
No, I didn't. Because when I first did it, I was at a school. We had about 32 to 36 different nationalities represented in a student body there. And so many of the grandparents were still in their home country or in different places. So yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So I just got the idea, like every day I'm in class and I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the world, and I'm like, wow, like I want my students to really like know each other, and like I want to know who they are. And I just like thought like what would be a really cool way to make that happen. And and at the same time, academically, like in the art world, like we're being responsible for about 20% of, reading and writing, all of this, test, all of that kind of stuff. But when you hear things or you get things like that from, professionally, I tend to think I take it not in a positive negative, but I just take it. Okay, how can I make this work for the student? If I'm going to do my best to enhance this part of their academic experience as well, what can I do that will really encompass what we're doing here as an art class? And I came up with that. I've done other stuff too, but that was the first, and like it was a really good project.
Yeah. How did they convey the stories that they gleaned from their ancestors or their elders?
So they presented, right? And they read their papers or they talked about them. I gave them a choice. They could read or they could just narrate. And just incredible stuff. I like students whose grandparents were like involved in civil rights, who have marched. I had one student, he was from Nigeria. His grandfather was the king of the part of Nigeria where he was at with his people. And so he talked about himself being, in line, a royal like line, family line, which I thought was fascinating. And and the more that you hear each student speak about their families, the more everything. Oh, that's why you do this, or this might be why. It just blossom. And those students are probably our age now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were the ahas between the students or you knowing about your students?
Say it again.
Were the ahas that are like, oh, that's why you do that? They between you and the students or between the students?
It was both. Yeah, it was between them and then with my experience with them. I was really picking up a lot in their personalities and things they were interested in. I had one student who expressed that their grandparent left their family home running for their lives. The house was on fire. There was a war, a coup or something that was going on, and had to get out.
Yeah.
So the ideas of injustice and power struggles that really get out of control. Yeah.
Wow. The reason I ask is that there's this book that I read from somebody who was just on. I think it was probably episode 6 or 7 or something. His name is Kwame Sarfo-Mensah, and it's a book called Learning to Relearn. Yeah. And in there, he talks about counter stories. And, defines counter stories as telling stories of those whose stories are not told. Yep. And I think a lot of times, we get one side or a certain story, but there's all kinds of different stories that are told. So it just really made me think about that when you talked about how they were interviewing, because I don't think we have enough opportunity to tell counter stories and to have folks that actually share, a narrative that hasn't been highlighted or amplified. So I appreciate you had that.
Thanks. I really don't look at them as counter stories. They're stories.
Right. I love that. Right. I think they're counter stories from the perspective of they don't get any airtime, right? It's like it's countering the narrative that is pushed out there. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, and that's why I think the word counter comes into it. But you're right, absolutely right. It's a story.
Yeah. I would like the mindset that I take is that my life is not a prescription that someone else wrote outside of my culture. Now I have a choice to subscribe to certain things,
right?
But I can't sit back and take the passive this is being prescribed to me and I have no other choice. I want to fight back again. You have a choice.
Right.
We all have a choice, and so I'm very careful, like what I subscribe to, and I recognize that it's me in accent, and something's not being done to me.
Right.
I am doing something to be here, and if I don't want to be here, I can change my position and go elsewhere.
That's such a more, I think, in a productive mindset, right? Because it's like, otherwise we could sit here and just feel the weight of all of other things that are out there.
There's no way. The idea, the way I see, like with racism and I ain't like, what they call white supremacy or whatever. I just bullying at best. That is that they always need an audience. Like if you can't, if you're so great, this is just my question. If you're so great, why you here needing me to recognize who you are? You don't know who you are? I know who I am. And it goes back to like at work when people don't want to give you your accolades, like, Dr. Johnson. I know I'm Dr. Johnson.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because having come to this country at such a young age, I was 3 when I got here. And so I started preschool here in the United States. And, coming up in the country, my adopted country, if you will, and my parents being immigrants and I don't know the specific like whys of why they were going, putting their head down and don't bring attention to yourself. But I think there was something different in terms of my experience where I didn't grow in that confidence. I didn't know who I was. I'm still trying to discover who I am because thinking about, this is what the Philippines was like when my parents were growing up. What happened before that? There were so many different iterations of what is now called the Philippines that I want to go back and learn about, right? Because we're a warrior people. Even if we weren't necessarily successful in fighting off our colonizers, there was a fight in us. And so, it's something that I am still searching for and still thirsting for. And so I love that you had that experience with your family where, that I don't know that it was necessarily like an intentional thing, but they really wrapped your arms around one another and built that confidence within yourself to where you can have that productive mindset. I mean, I still struggle with that today, with silencing the outside noise, right? And trying to listen to who am I inside. I don't need to get to class. I just need to think and listen.
Yeah, you're exactly like right in the different feelings that are there. If I remember like going to a class and feeling that weight of what I'm bringing in has no value, right? And just at present, I have to learn literally everything I need to learn in this class during these times to be able to pass. To the opposite of that, going into a class with everything that I have.
Right.
All my ancestors were always with, never alone.
Right.
And being able to be present there. I'm going to learn, but I'm not there to be prescribed to. And if I have a rebuttal, then I'm going to do my due diligence and do it structurally in academics. So it's a huge difference. I mean, you're absolutely right. To be able to lift that off from you and take that from inside you, it is so liberating.
Yeah.
Yeah,
let me tell you, it wasn't until I moved up here to the Bay Area that I started seeing a different story than what I had been that I had grown up with.
Mhm.
And it was so although I get, the different identities and the different cultural, what did you call them? Cultural logic.
Logics. Yeah, cultural logics.
It was eye-opening to see and consider other cultural logic within my own community.
Yeah.
Because it's, we're not monolithic. None of us are, right? So to see that was very liberating for me. So yeah, it's allowed me to like shed this kind of, like you said, it's like, I think that was living with the prescription. I'm like, you're giving me the language of what I was going through. So, but at any rate, we are at the end of our time, and I just wanted to just say thank you so much. This has been a great conversation that I knew I wanted to talk to you more about the things that you were talking about in our very first session, and I really do appreciate that you came back to share with us more.
Thank you for having me again. Great conversation. So happy that I met you, and our paths will keep crossing. So
absolutely, this isn't the last time. Just as a reminder for those who might be in your spaces, like what are the two speaking engagements that you have going on in March?
So the 8th of March, I will be in Philadelphia. That's the Northeastern Modern Language Association. And so the topic that I'm speaking is to read, to talk, and academic freedom in the classroom. Yeah. And then the 22nd of March, I will be in Cincinnati. That's the National Council for Black Studies. And I will be doing a qualitative method presentation. So in my doctorate program, I constructed my thematic and theoretical framework for my research model.
Got it.
So I'm presenting that.
So you never know who this is reaching. You might have folks out there that might be attending those two conferences. So check them out. Check out Dr. Johnson. Again, thank you so much. And until next time.
Until next time.
For Inside the Teacher Studio. Bye.